All right, welcome back to another weekly recap. I'm Brie E Anderson, and this week we're going to be talking about, well, Google a lot. The new changes to the Google Partner Program, how California is coming after Google My Business. Then we're gonna hit a little bit on Yelp and some new ad formats and analytics they have coming to the platform. Then we're gonna hit on Facebook's new acquisitions and ventures, and then we're gonna go outside digital and talk about how the Warner Brothers learned that SEO was important. All right, first things first, let's address these changes that came to the Google Partner Program. So in case you didn't know, the Google Partner Program was essentially a program with agencies that allowed agencies to get a partner badge if they had people that were certified, Google Ads certified, if they spent over $10,000 in 90 days and they followed best practices. Now, that basically meant that anyone that took the ads exam and had an agency was able to get the partner program badge, as long as they hit that $10,000 over 90 days. Well, Google just revamped this entire program and they've changed it to where now you have to spend $20,000 in 90 days. Half of all of the admins on a Google ad account have to be certified, and Google is going to be checking accounts for best practices as it pertains to their recommendations and their optimization scores. Now, I have a lot of issues with this. The first thing is that half of all of the admins have to be Google Ads certified. That's kind of an issue because when you think of your My Client Center and you think of how many different people have access to each of those accounts, that's a lot of people, and not just people in the agency, right? And then you're talking about business owners and the people that they let have access to the information, even if it's just read only. So I'm not too sure how they're going to work that out. And also, if we're being honest, the Google Ads certification is kind of a joke because you can look up all of the answers as you're taking it, and they take a very long time to go through. I'm just not a huge fan of that. I don't really think that that's necessary for an agency to be a Google partner. Then if we start talking about the need for companies to comply with Google's recommendations and optimization scores, I haven't had too many problems with the optimization scores. I will say that I handle far less PPC money now though, so I don't have that much experience in this. But I do know that the majority of the recommendations that Google makes have to do with getting more money from the users. So now Google is going to be taking away people's partner badges if they're not following the recommendations that Google sets, which, by the way, the majority of the times, like I said, they're saying things like increase your budget by 20 or 30%. Most agencies don't really have that leeway. They don't really get to make that call. And trying to relay that to a business who is close on their budget already is not going to work. It's not going to happen. So I don't really see a lot of good coming out from this Google Partners program, other than the fact that they're going to be getting more of people's money. In my opinion, the Google Partner badge means absolutely nothing to me as somebody who practices PPC and has done a lot of Google ad work in the past. And, some now, like I said, it doesn't mean much to me. I know that for some, it can be kind of a way to sell themselves to clients. Anyways, it'll be very interesting to see what Google does and if they keep things this way. I know that they've rolled out a lot of changes recently that they've had to go back on, at least on the search side. So we'll see. If you're going to be having any issues with your Google Partner badge, just have that in the back of your head and ready to go and explain that to your clients, kind of why you might be losing that credential. All right, now on the other side of Google, let's talk about Google My Business for a minute. So a couple of years ago, Google My Business started placing order now or checkout now buttons on restaurants' knowledge panel. And what this did was it allowed users or searchers to order from restaurants on Postmates, Uber Eats, Grubhub, all these different apps. They were able to use those apps to order from the restaurants right away. Now, there were a lot of problems with this. The first is that the restaurants never explicitly opted in to having those buttons on their knowledge panel. So Google just put them there. They were automatically there. Another issue is that it kind of forced a lot of restaurants to start allowing these services to deliver their food, even if the restaurant already had delivery service themselves. So there was a lot of competition there. Well, this week, California came out and said that they're going to be pushing against Google and fighting them on this because, like I said, the restaurants never agreed to having those buttons there. So California is going to be going against Google, trying to get those buttons removed unless restaurants say that they want them there, because this can really be harmful. Like I said, they're losing business. They're probably getting undercut by these apps if they have a delivery service especially, but it's also an issue when you think about a restaurant who did not sign up to have these services, did not sign up to have these buttons, and all of a sudden they have drivers who they haven't trained, they haven't hired, delivering their food, because that's the face that people are going to be tying to their brand now, and they had no control over that, right? That's an issue, because people don't always separate, especially you have to think of all of the people that use search. Not all of those people are going to understand that these different apps are actually not affiliated with that business at all, that instead that's a solo person that's, using a rideshare app or a delivery share app essentially and delivering that food. That person has no training whatsoever. That's an issue. And I know that a lot of people were upset about it. They just didn't know what to do. Well, California's decided that they know what to do. While they house a lot of the big tech companies, California is the first one that's kind of pioneering this privacy and has the first thing in place that looks something similar to GDPR. We know that they're kind of on the forefront of this. So they're going against those companies and they're saying, hey, you can't do this without people's consent. Even more so, they're requesting that apps that take any deliveries for a specific restaurant has to turn around and give that information over to the restaurant, because while California is interested in securing data and ensuring that people are opting into it, they also realize the value of the data. And so in a world where it is so expensive to attract new clients, and we know that we have to keep the clients we currently have, California is saying that they deserve the right to that data and they need to get it because it is valuable information. I think this is only step one. So as an SEO, I know a lot of us have issues with some of the things that Google does, some of the way they use the data that we create or the content that we create, and some of the things they do with our data. And I think that California is definitely going to spearhead, and we're going to start seeing more and more people come to Google with situations like this saying, hey, you're using this in a way that it was not intended to be. I never signed up for this. I don't consent to this. I think we're going to start seeing more of these sort of lawsuits. Okay, now I want to talk about the latest acquisition that Facebook made of a company called Scape Tech. And what Scape Tech is, it is a visual positioning service. So like even more in depth than GPS is, with coordinates, it actually can detect where exactly you are in a room. And like I said, Facebook acquired it, and all of the statements that came from Facebook were essentially no comment. We don't know how we're going to use this, blah, 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 blah. I, for one, think this was a ballsy move on Facebook's part because they've had so many issues with privacy and all the data they collect, and then they're going to turn around and grab a company like this. I think there are two reasons that Facebook could be acquiring a company like this, and I think the first is obviously the data, right? So if we think back to a couple episodes where I talked about the agency that's now going to be tracking users' data inside their store and selling that and using that data to place ads for advertisers, I think that Facebook could be doing something like this. So they do place a lot of ads for people that have brick and mortar stores. So maybe they're going to be using it for some sort of in-store tracking. I highly doubt that. It's probably more so, again, just to sell that information. But on the flip side, I think that there could be, if you look at the articles, you can see kind of the diagrams that Scape Tech have created and some of the things that they've been able to find. I do think that there's an opportunity for Facebook to use something like that to continue to push themselves towards AR and VR. There's definitely a lot of opportunity with that if the technology is able to recreate what's going on inside of a room. Zuckerberg was talking about in his 2020 resolution, he was talking about, how is he going to push Facebook forward into a way that people from across the world can be connected in a personal way as if they're sitting in the same room. I think that this Scape Tech could definitely be a way for him to kind of create that atmosphere. Now, whether he actually uses it for that or as just another way to sell data, we don't really know yet, but I would definitely be on the lookout, and I'll give you more information as I get it. So that's the acquisition side of what Facebook did this week. On the venture side, Facebook is going to be releasing a standalone app called Hobbi. And if you look at Hobbi, it looks a lot like Pinterest in the way that it's collections of photos and videos from users that users post of their do-it-yourself type projects. So in the sample that they put out, there was one that was just gardening and it showed all the pictures of the person's garden. There was one that said like woodwork and it was all the different woodwork projects that user had done. Now I think this is really cool, and do-it-yourself is definitely a big opportunity for anyone right now, and it's exploding. Just that entire arena is exploding. I think it would be interesting for them to move forward with that and then kind of connect it to their marketplace somehow. I think that there's some opportunity there because we know that a lot of people that have home businesses, in the sense that they're selling some of their DIY stuff, they use Facebook to sell some of their stuff. They use Etsy to sell some of their stuff. There are all these different platforms. I think if they could find a way to integrate Hobbi, which is this Pinterest style app, and marketplace, they would be really onto something there. But as of right now, it's just those collections, and there's really not too many social features built into it. It's very simple for a Facebook app, which honestly I kind of like. I think that they could benefit from it. It will be interesting to see how they differentiate themselves from Pinterest because that's where most people are going for their DIY projects. And honestly, they really have a good stronghold on that. But I guess they see an opening in the niche that I don't see right now. So those are two things to be looking out for Facebook. Some more precise location data and information, and this move into the DIY space even further. All right, so let's jump into these changes coming to the Yelp ads. So the first things first, they released a new ad type called showcase ads, and they've explained it as video-centric, meaning that you can use video, but you don't have to use video. From the looks of it, it is a full screen experience where you have the video or the creative up top, and it gives, that information from your business below. So I'm thinking that they didn't really release too much information about it, just that it's a new ad type. My guess is it's going to be present during search, and it's going to be an interactive experience, but there's really no telling right now just because I've not been able to find too much information about it. But at the same time, they released Store Visit Attribution. So this is a really big deal. Up until now, Yelp has not had a way to attribute store visits to ads that you've placed on Yelp, but now they're going to be able to, and they're going to be able to show metrics like cost per visit. And that's a really big deal. I know Facebook has something similar to it. Google just rolled out something similar to it not too long ago, but Yelp is a big place when it comes to searching for restaurants and things of that nature, and it's built right into Apple Maps. So if you're ever going to look at reviews on Apple Maps, Yelp automatically pops up, right? So the fact that you are now going to be able to have this attribution is a really big deal. Even more so, they said that it's going to be available for people that have national brands and multi-locations. So they're going to actually be able to attribute, you had this many visits here, and on average you were paying however much. Now, Denny's was one of the first people to test out this showcase ad and this store visit attribution. And when they did, they found that on average, they were paying about $1.19 per visit, and that most of the visits, like 90% of them, happened within 24 hours. That is a really big deal if you're looking to get more foot traffic. I would be all over that if I had a brick and mortar location. So these are really big things coming from Yelp. Again, like I said, people are looking to diversify this year. All of their money is either on Facebook or Google, and they're looking to diversify. If you're looking to diversify and you have a brick and mortar place, Yelp might be the place to go. And especially now that they have video, you're going to be one of the first to be using video for this showcase ad. So I would definitely say jump on it and just see what you can do, especially because you're going to get those attribution numbers. That is a very, very big deal. I personally have not gotten to place many Yelp ads. So if you're doing it, please leave a comment below and let us know what your experience is. All right, let's get outside digital and let's talk about this new Harley Quinn movie that came out. So the new Harley Quinn movie, in case you didn't know, is called Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Excellent Something Adventures of Harley Quinn. I don't know. It was a really, really long name, but mostly the name of the movie was Birds of Prey. So when this movie was created, it's kind of like a sequel to the Suicide Squad movies. And Harley Quinn was like the biggest character that came from Suicide Squad. When they created this movie, they were projecting 50 to 55 million in box office sales. Well, it turns out after the movie was released and it got all of these great reviews from critics, so it did really well on Rotten Tomatoes, which nobody ever does well on Rotten Tomatoes. The movie itself performed very well, but if you look at the box office numbers, they were actually only at like 30 million in the first week. That's not very good. I mean, to me, it sounds very good, but when you're projecting, you're telling investors it's going to be between 50 and 55 million. That's kind of like a $20 million gap. That's not a very good thing. So they started looking into what could have been the reason. There was some talk about like the trailer didn't really say too much about what was going to happen in the movie. That happens a lot. In my opinion, trailers don't do a great job of explaining what's going to happen in a movie, or they take like all the good parts from the movie and there's nothing left to be expected. So there was some talk about that, but then they started looking at it more. And if you go to Google Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey isn't the first thing to come up like in the Google rich features. For me, it would be like if you were to look up movies happening in Wichita this weekend, I would get all of these rich feature cards that have the movie times, what movies are playing, what have you, right? And I could click on it. But if you looked up Harley Quinn, that feature isn't going to pop up because the name of the movie was Birds of Prey, and then the co-headline was this really long headline. At the end, it said with Harley Quinn. That is an issue, and Warner Brothers found that out pretty quickly, and they actually changed the name of the movie to be Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey. They had to go back and change the name in all of the theaters to this name because on search, they weren't popping up the things they needed to pop up in order to sell tickets. This is just another example of why you should bring SEOs in early. And when you're creating your content, why you should think about how users are going to search it, right? So if we know that from Suicide Squad, Harley Quinn was the most popular character, and we're releasing this movie that's about Harley Quinn, we should know that when people are going to search, they're going to look up Harley Quinn movie. They're not going to look up Birds of Prey and the fabulous, exemptional, blah, 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 adventures of Harley Quinn, right? So Warner Brothers actually, like I said, they had to go back and they changed the name of the movie. If you want to read more about this, the original story came from The Verge, and they did a pretty in-depth piece on it. I'll be checking The Verge to see if there are any more updates, because I really hope that they'll tell us whether or not they saw an increase in ticket sales from that. But Warner Brothers literally came out and made a statement that said, we're changing this in hope of more ticket sales from search. So that's a really big deal. Always be looking at it. This is just something else that tells you you have to work as a team, right? There can't be silos. You can't go through an entire process launch and not have talked to every part of the business because an SEO probably would have had a good idea that this was not going to go well on search. That's all for this week, guys. Thanks for watching another weekly recap. I have a few big announcements coming out this week, so I hope you'll follow me on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever your heart desires, so you can be a part of those. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.